Thank you to the panel for your testimony. It has been said over time that foreign aid is taking money from poor people in rich countries and giving it to rich people in poor countries. That's the criticism that's been leveled against foreign aid. Throughout time, there have been a lot of examples of billionaires in countries that seem to have converted somehow some of the aid or access to the aid or access to goods somehow to their own personal aggrandizement. The Mubarak family is said to be worth 10 to 15 billion. Nobody's quite sure how legitimately that was achieved, but some of us would argue that some of it came from the 60 billion that we've sent them over the last 30 years. What would you say to that statement, I guess, Congressman Colby, and agree, disagree, and better or worse than it used to be?
Absolutely agree with your statement. We would be lying to ourselves if we tried to say that there haven't been examples of where our assistance has ended up in going into the hands of a handful of people in the country and enriching them. And you mentioned a couple, and that's certainly, in my experience when I was in Congress, I've seen that in those countries myself, where this has happened. I think that's the importance of what we're talking about here today. Is what we've got here are these public-private partnerships, where I think we're not talking about, this is not a public-private partnership of Lockheed or something, and nothing wrong with Lockheed, but just saying some major company that's selling huge numbers of aircraft to them.
Do you think we're a lot better, though, overall than we were 20 years ago as far as, billionaire leaders, dictators, despots taking our money?
Yes. Do we have as many despots? Yes, we do have as many despots as we have, but I think we have a little bit better sense of where the money should be going. So I think we are better.
Going to the point of trade and how we sort of improve the lot of people and do it in a way that's mutually beneficial to the world. The young man that burned himself in Tunisia that sort of set off the Arab Spring, there was a great article in the Wall Street Journal a couple years ago from Hernando de Soto, I think, wrote it, the economist from Peru.
I'm familiar with him, yes.
And the point he made, I thought, was an incredible point. He made the point that if you look at the unofficial market, the black market of Egypt and of most countries, that it exceeds our foreign aid like by 20-fold. It's just an enormous amount. And his frustration was really, the man who burned himself, wasn't a religious protest. It was that he couldn't get a license for his truck. He wanted to become a truck farmer, which is actually what my family was when they came here. We peddled vegetables and then became truck farmers and then somehow doctors and other things. But the thing is that it was that economic limitation. And DeSoto's point is that somehow we have to figure out, and I don't know that we can necessarily do that, but it's incredibly important for these countries if they want to develop. It's sort of making the unofficial official, the black market, bringing it into the normal market and letting it grow. But so much of that is bureaucracy and socialism and too much government, lack of title to your land. Our capital in our country comes from borrowing mostly against our houses. That's the biggest form of capital probably in our country, that or real estate. It's not some kind of borrowing power. But I guess knowing or understanding that that's part of the problem, what are the solutions, and are we closer to achieving those solutions than we've been in the past? Congressman Colby.
Well, once again, you are on the right track. You're absolutely correct. Hernando de Soto, of course, has made much of his name and the work that he's done on property rights in these titles in countries like Peru and then in Egypt as well. If you don't have title to land, how can you sell it? How can you develop it? What can you do to it? So you need to have titles, and these countries have not had titles. So just something as simple as that, I think, is one of the key things. Before you were here, I mentioned that the key problems that I think we face in these countries is not often the problem of high tariffs. It's the barriers within the country to making development happen. It's the internal things that occur that make it impossible to start a business, the number of regulations that you have. I think Hernando de Soto identified something in Peru to start a small business. It was 179 or something like that, different approvals you had to have.
And I just wanted to interject one quick point. We do a lot, with NGOs with democracy promotion that you've talked about. But I wonder if we do enough with the promotion of good economic sense. The NGOs that do democracy promotion, I don't think they're really necessarily extolling Adam Smith or Milton Friedman, but I don't know that we do. It seems like those ideas are what hold back the third world as much as anything. The miracle in Chile was all of a sudden they accepted great free market ideas, you know. May not have been perfect, but I mean, there is definitely, Chile still has done quite well over the time, but I wonder if there's a role somewhere for something, and I just didn't even see a private role, but for some kind of group that believes in international trade to promote the ideas of, you know, title, you know, capital, and how it develops, so these countries would choose it, you know.
Just to conclude, I think there is a role for that, but right here we have the practitioners of the people who are in the country doing this on a daily basis, and that's the best antidote for the problems that these countries face.